Do you know how much to move your sight exactly in order to move your grouping by one scoring ring on the target? Getting a very high score in archery requires two things. One, it requires getting the tightest groups possible. And then it requires you to put those groups in the middle of the target, okay? Knowing how to move your sight, not just which direction, but precisely how much to move it, is free points, okay? So that's the good news, because in this video, I'm going to give you free points, okay? You don't have to change your technique. You don't have to buy new equipment. You don't have to do anything like that. You don't have to get more skillful. You just have to follow along the process that's in this recording. And I guarantee you're gonna add points to your next scoring round. This video is actually a recording from a workshop from a camp at the Australian Institute of Sport where we had our National Pathways Squad archers. So these are young talent ID archers who've been selected for future Olympic potential. And so at this camp, I did a demonstration on how to calculate those sight marks exactly. Now, first of all, if you want those free points, then like and subscribe to the video, certainly. But also, guys, I send out an exclusive behind the scenes coaching video similar to this one every single Friday. Now, those are exclusive, and basically it's just live coaching. It's coaching happening just like this. So if you like this type of content and you learn something, then make sure I'll leave a link below where you can access that for free and get more free points. So enjoy. Okay, so what's technical?
It's your process.
The process? Yep. What else? What else is included under technical? Equipment? Yep. Yep. What else? Mental? Maybe. Yeah.
Your technique.
Your technique. Yes. Like where to stand, where to put your shoulders, how to draw, all that sort of stuff. What else? Is that it? Yeah, so working on technique and stuff is technical. What's tactical? What's the difference?
Like a mental strategy.
A mental strategy? Yes. Any specific examples? Like anything?
Aiming off.
Aiming off. Yeah. When to aim off, how much to aim off. What else? What else is tactical? Think about it for a second. Is that the only tactic in archery?
Getting the other archers' heads.
Get in the other archers' heads. Mind games. I don't know if I condone that, but that could be a tactic. It could be a tactic used against you as well, right? So how you respond to that, like what happens if someone's playing mind games, that could be a tactical thing. What else?
Get back.
What else is tactical? What are we doing this morning? Warm up, okay. So tactical could be like the whole pre-competition ritual or process. What else? In game, guys, in the competition, what's tactical?
I was gonna say like looking at the scores or not looking at the scores.
I'm thinking more in terms of when to move your sight, how much to move your sight, what to do if you're under 10 seconds of time pressure and you've got an arrow left to shoot. You know, in match play, you know, who's going to act in what rotation? Okay, how are you going to step up to the line? How are you going to step up to the line? What happens if you get an equipment failure? So these are tactics that you need to understand in archery, right? So there's lots of different tactics you can use. But today what we're going to focus on is predominantly sight settings. Because we think as a coaching team that you guys go into youth nationals, this is the one area where you guys can probably gain the most points. We don't want to mess with you technically. We don't want to change things. Within 12 weeks of a competition, it's not the time to mess with your technique, change things. You can improve what you're already doing, but you shouldn't be constantly tinkering, because by the time you get to a competition, you're not going to be settled into your form just yet, right? Any changes. So, but it is a good time to work on tactics, because you can get very quick gains in results just by tidying up some of your tactics. All right, so when we talk about aiming and moving our sight settings, what are some of the most common mistakes that can happen? Like, how could you lose points from your sight settings?
Not moving your sight when your group is
Okay.
in the center.
Yes. Not moving your sight. What's another mistake?
Moving too much between those normal sides.
Yes. You could say not knowing how much to move it. I'll give Gabby bonus points or Gabriel for saying the same thing.
Moving it the wrong way.
The wrong way, right. Moving it the wrong direction. What else?
Moving it too often.
Too often? Yep. So like anticipating and overcooking the sight settings. You could say that. Yep. That's pretty good, right? Basically, that would cover it. Moving it, not moving it, or moving it on the 11th end of a QRE, right? Shooting it in the same place for like 6 ends before you figure out when to move it. Moving it too much or too little. Too little is the most common sin, where people just give it click, 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 and by the end of your 72 arrows, you've got the perfect sight setting. But the tournament's over. Moving the wrong direction, rookie error, but who's made that mistake before? Yep. Okay, we've all done it. Moving it too often. Has anyone made that mistake? Yep. Maybe you make a a mistake in your shot. It wasn't a good one, but you crank it anyway. The next thing is, when should you move your sight? There's a few different approaches to this, so open to you guys. When should you move your sight? Does anyone have a specific rule or approach to this? Ashton?
When like most of the arrows are grouping well in the wrong spot. Like
So when you have a group.
Yes, if you're like a group, you can tell it's clearly not in the right spot.
Any other ideas around that? Did you have a?
Yeah, so like when I plot my arrows and I can see the group center for the end is like below the middle of the 9, like at the top.
Yep.
Move it.
Is it sort of similar, right? When you have a group, when you can see a group?
Yeah.
How many arrows constitute a group for you? Now this might be slightly different. James and I had a talk about this last night. So yeah, how many arrows make a group? This is somewhat dependent on skill level, because for a rookie archer who's just starting out, you might need to shoot a whole end or maybe multiple ends before you get any idea of resemblance of a group. But for an experienced archer, maybe like 1, 2, or 3 shots is enough to get a pretty reliable group. And for elite archers, they might have enough experience to know that just based on that one shot, they're confident where it lands and they can make a bold adjustment based on that one arrow. So I agree with this when you have a group, but when you have a group, may be dependent on your skill level and experience a little bit. Anything to add, coaches? Happy with that? As well, sometimes if you shoot with a scope or not, might affect that. So if you're shooting without a scope, my suggestion is that you shoot an end and you go down there, and at every end you need to look at your group. Okay? Whereas if you're shooting with a scope, you might base it off 3 arrows, make an adjustment, and go from there. So the next thing we need to do is figure out how to assess your group. So if you look around the room, you'll notice that I've drawn some dots in the corners. We're going to split into 3 groups. What you're going to do is I've given you guys some sort of, is that 6 arrows? No. I've given you some sort of arrow distribution that would look like this. And what I want you to do is to grab a marker pen, and as a group, you've got 4 different arrow patterns to plot, and I want you to put a mark in the very center of that group. Now, let me just explain how this works. The idea is the most points in archery is gained when your group as a whole is central on the target, right? So we want to move our sight so that the center of our group is on the center of the target. So being able to look at a grouping of arrows and pinpoint the center of that group is a really important tactical skill that you need to be able to do. And you need to be able to do it pretty fluidly and visually. You guys all use Archery Success, yeah? So you're familiar with what the program does it for you automatically, doesn't it? So you're familiar with this already, where the center of the group lines up every single end. Whereas you need to be able to do it though. Archery Success isn't going to really help you in a tournament unless you take it back and you plot it separately, or unless you plot it on a separate arrow plot template or something. So this exercise is going to go in here and go, all right, the center mass of this group is going to be where? Somewhere here? Boom. I've got no arrows in the center of my group, but if that's where the center of my group is, I'm going to adjust my sight based on that measurement.
Because it's 5 arrows to 1. Yeah, I would say.
Circle it. Right, come on, you've only got a short period of time. Where's the center?
Okay, so I'll give you a pretty short time to do that, 4 minutes to get in groups, go, plot it, come sit back down. Why? Why do you have to, yeah.
Because you won't have time in a competition.
Yeah, you're gonna have to be pretty switched on with this stuff. How often should you be doing this sort of mental exercise for yourself? Every end. Yeah, every time you go to the target, whether you're in practice or in competition, you really need to get into the zone of being able to accurately assess where your group is and pick the center point, right? Now, you may come up with a rule. For example, in this scenario, if I shot this group and I knew that this was a mistake, then I might ignore that one and put the center of my group here. But if I didn't know and it felt good to me, I would include it in the analysis. Make sense? So if you know you made a mistake and you want to ignore it, that's okay. But the most important thing is that you're consistent with constantly assessing the center point of your group. Now we're going to do something a little bit risky. We're going to do maths. All right. So I'm going to write an equation on the board. X minus y divided by z equals happy face. Okay? So X, Y, Z, happy face. X is sight mark 1. Okay? That's your first sight mark. Y is sight mark 2. That's your second sight mark. So the distance between sight mark 1 and sight mark 2 is X minus Y. Everyone following me so far? One person's nodding. Is there anyone who doesn't understand this logic? It's okay, I'm happy to help you. Silence, I'll take it as passive agreement, because we're teenagers and it's before 10 a.m. Z. Z is the sight, how many scoring rings the group moves by. Okay, so I'm going to say scoring rings moved. So, if I move my grouping, and I've plot the center point of my grouping, and on the center point of my grouping, one end it's here, and the next end it's here, how many scoring rings have I moved? Great. If it goes from here to here, how many scoring rings have I moved?
3.
If I move from here to here, 1, 2, 3. Okay? So one thing to keep in mind is when you're moving either side, the distance from the, got my lovely assistant here. Okay, thank you. So the distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here and here to here. So the 10 ring, yes, it's only one scoring ring, but it's got 2 sides to it. Just keep that in mind if you're making adjustments that are going from either way. You with us so far? Great. So now we're going to do a little exercise. We're going to apply this theory. Oh, sorry, I forgot to explain what happy face means. Happy face means is how much you need to move your sight to move one scoring zone. Okay? So it's a sight movement for one scoring zone. And that's why, because that's so wordy, that's why we're just going to say it's your happy place. Because if you know how much to move your sight to get one scoring ring, then you're happy. Because you can be very, very precise with your sight movements. We cool? So the drill we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to go outside and we're going to do, I'm going to give you a few ends to warm up at your distances and make sure that, and as part of your warm-up ends, I want you guys to start getting the habit of picking out the exact spot of the center of your group. You have to pick a spot. You can't pick an area. Okay? And what we're going to do then is we're going to go through an exercise where we get you to intentionally move your sights off the mark, and then we're going to apply this equation, and we're going to calculate how much you need to move your sight to get one happy face. 1 point. Any questions?
Now, Jared, I presume that it will change at each distance.
Yes, really good point. It'll change at its distance, and it will also change obviously if you change target face size and things like that. That's why we've got you to shoot your official ranking distance this morning, because that's probably the most important one. Would you guys agree? But if you want to go forth and do this calculation for all of your other distances, then you can do that pretty easily after this cam. If you want to do it for every single field distance, that might be a bit extreme, because that's for every 5-minute interval, and that's going to start to get very, very complicated to do the mental maths. So for field archery, we tend to aim off rather than constantly adjust our sights. But for target for 720 round, certainly, at least for your 720 distance, if you can know exactly how much to move your sight by, then you have a huge edge over your competitors, and you can beat people who are technically a higher skill level than you, just by knowing that if my grouping is here, I know exactly how far to move it across and up, so that the very next end, my group is bang in the guts. Okay? All right, let's break, go outside and shoot.
Taking to what I tried to.
All right, so we've just done an exercise now where we've gone through outside. You've had some practice at plotting the exact center point of your group. Did anyone learn anything from that process? Did your group move a little bit each end? Even a little bit? Yeah. Obviously, the more consistent you are in your technique and your training, then the more consistent your grouping will be. But the best you can do is to accurately judge the center point of your group and act accordingly. That's the best you can do, right? And obviously, there is benefit from being more consistent, because you're going to have much more precision and consistency with your groupings. Okay, so now what we're going to do, let's say you've had your grouping and it is there. So it's in the 10, it's like a high 10. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our sights, and I suggest you move them 3 full sight marks on your sight rail. Okay, so this is James's sight. Thanks for volunteering your sight. I'm going to crank it. So at the moment we've got it on 73.5. We want to be as precise as possible. And I'm going to move it down to what's 73.5 plus 3 marks?
76.5.
76.5. So let's give it a crank. Okay, that's 76.5. Would you agree, James? You can double check my work. Here you go. All right, so then you're going to shoot another end when we go back out there. Okay, and let's say we've moved it down, so where's our arrows going to go? There were 2 options there. So somewhere like that is what we expect. Okay, so if that's the case, how many scoring rings has this group moved? Yeah, that's all right. Don't worry about being wrong twice in a row, Ellen. Go ahead.
3.
3. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and
A tiny
3.5. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to our equation. Come over here, you two, Paco. Sight mark 1 is 73.5. Sight mark 2 is, come in close. 76.5. Okay, and Z equals 3.5. All right, someone do the maths? Who's got a calculator? Who's quick? Go for it, guys. What is that? Take that divided by that.
0.857.
0.86, let's call it.
Okay.
All right? Or let's be realistic. We're going to round that to 0.9. Okay? Because can anyone adjust their sight to point to 3 decimal places? Let's- Okay. If you can, I'm impressed. So, okay, so that means that one scoring ring is 0.9 of a mark. Okay? In this fictitious scenario, we just made that up. We're obviously going to go and test that for ourselves. But that's the maths. So now what we're going to do is everyone go outside. You're going to adjust your sights by 3 sight marks. Down, up, you get to choose the direction. Then we're going to shoot a group, and we're going to do the calculation.
Make sure you know what this first sight mark is.
Right, yes, thank you, Irene. Write down right now, before you do anything, your precise sight mark to 3 decimal places. To 1 decimal place. Okay? Any questions? Action. Quick recap. What we've done is we've got your groups pretty close to the middle. We've used our little markers to pick the center point of our group. We've adjusted our sights by precisely 3 marks on the vertical rail. We've then done 3 ends to check the grouping, and we've calculated the distance between our groupings 3 times and found an average to give you a pretty reliable, group set for your adjustments. Everyone happy with the vertical now? Excellent. That's something you can apply basically immediately, and this afternoon when you've got a scoring round, hopefully that we'll see that reflected in the points. Next, we can look at the windage, okay, the horizontal adjustment. Now, what's interesting about this, guys, is that it actually, the amount you move your sight vertically to move your grouping by 1 scoring ring will be the exact same amount you need to move your sight horizontally to move it by 1 scoring ring. However, the vertical scale on many sites is actually a different spacing from the horizontal scale on your windage mark here. Does that make sense? So on this one, I actually think it's slightly different. So what we're going to do is we're going to check the windage as well. So you guys have just gone down, recentered your groupings back in the middle. That's the easiest way to do the mental maths. And now what I want you to do is I want you to crank your windage by quite a few marks. So on this one, this is Ashton's. I'd move it all the way across to the right-hand peg, which is 5 windage marks to the right. Okay, that's what I would do for you. And then we'll shoot some more groups, and we'll do that same calculation for the windage. Is there any questions? Does that make sense?
Once again, make sure you know where your original mark is.
Yes. Everyone's just done that. You're happy with your windage mark from that end? Anyone take a photo? Yes, gold star to Brock, taking a photo. Okay, so let's do that now, guys. Crank your windage all the way over. Record how many marks. How did you go? Were you able to calculate exactly how much to move your sight by in order to move 1 scoring zone across with your grouping? It's not that complicated, but let me know your happy place in the comments below. What's your vertical and horizontal adjustment to move 1 scoring zone? Now, other than just how much to move your sight by, what I hope you gain most out of this video is the confidence in moving your sight. So here's the thing, I always say that the most important part about your equipment is your confidence in it. And if you get a grouping and then you can make 1 bold adjustment that brings it back to the center, and you're going to then know with confidence that it's dialed in, you can then direct your focus back to what you should be focusing on, that internal process focus, and not get distracted by the outcome or where your grouping is and doubting your sight. And is it the wrong? Is it the wind? Is it me? What could it be? No, it's going to take one more variable away from you. And so that's going to increase your confidence and be able to focus better on what you should be focusing on. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to be posting a lot more of this type of content. And if you want even more of this type of content, then make sure you sign up to Rogue Archery Behind the Scenes, where I'm just going to be beaming out some live coaching examples just like this one every single Friday. Enjoy.